I shouldn't have been there that night. The house was too quiet, too dim, the kind of silence that makes you notice the hum of the refrigerator and your own breathing. I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold, telling myself I was only waiting for my brother to come home. But he wouldn't. He was out, working late again, or maybe avoiding the place altogether. And then she walked in. Her footsteps were soft against the hardwood, but the moment I saw her in the doorway, I straightened. She wore one of his old sweaters, sleeves falling over her wrists, hair tied up like she hadn't expected anyone to look at her. For a second, she froze too, like she hadn't expected me. "You're still awake?" she asked, voice low, almost guilty. "Couldn't sleep." I shrugged, trying to sound casual. But my throat felt too dry, and I could hear the scrape of the chair legs as I shifted. She crossed the room slowly, poured herself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. She didn't look at me right away. She almost never did. That was her way of keeping things safe, by pretending I was only the younger brother, the one she had no reason to notice. But tonight her eyes lingered. It was nothing, maybe. A glance too long, or a silence that stretched past comfort. But I caught it. I felt it. "I thought you'd be out," she said finally. "With friends." "Didn't feel like it." She nodded, tapping her finger against the glass. Her posture was careful, controlled, but I noticed the small things, the way she pulled her sleeves over her hands, the way her lips pressed together as though holding back something unsaid. I wanted to ask her if she was happy. Not with the house, not with her job, but with him, with my brother. But that wasn't something I could say out loud. Not without crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Instead, I asked, "You okay?" Her eyes lifted to mine. She didn't answer right away. The pause was longer than it should have been, enough to make my chest tighten. Then she said, "Yeah. Just tired." But her voice dipped on the last word, like maybe tired meant something else. I swallowed hard, looking down at the mug between my hands. "Yeah. Me too." The air felt heavy. Not suffocating, but charged, like the moment before rain, when everything is too still. I could feel her presence across the room, more than I should have. She was my brother's fiancée. She had no business making me notice the way her hair slipped loose from its tie, or how her sweater hung wide at the collar, exposing the curve of her shoulder. And I had no business noticing. But I did. She placed her glass in the sink, the soft clink of it against the porcelain snapping the moment in half. She turned like she was about to leave, then hesitated, hand resting on the counter. "You should get some rest," she said gently. I almost nodded. Almost let her go. But something in me held still, refusing. And that's when it happened, quick, unplanned. She looked back at me. Not the way you'd look at a brother, not even the way you'd look at a friend. It was softer. Riskier. A look that carried weight. My breath caught, and before I could decide if I'd imagined it, the sound of the doorbell cut through the silence, sharp, unexpected, breaking us apart. Her hand froze on the counter. My mug rattled against the table. We didn't move. We just looked at each other. And I knew, in that pause, nothing would be the same after tonight. The doorbell stopped ringing after a while. Neither of us had moved to answer it. Whoever it was had left, but the sound still echoed inside me, like a reminder of how close I'd been to something I shouldn't even want. She broke the silence first. "Strange hour for visitors," she murmured, forcing a small smile, but her eyes didn't match the tone. I nodded, unsure of what to say. The air between us was already too thick. She turned toward the stairs, and I should have let her go. But instead, I said, "Do you ever regret saying yes to him?" The words hung there, reckless, heavier than the quiet itself. She stopped. Her back stiffened, and for a second, I thought she might snap at me. But she didn't. She just stood there, one hand on the railing, like she was deciding whether to keep climbing or come back down. Finally, she whispered, "That's not fair." Her voice was soft, but the edge in it was enough to sting. She went upstairs, leaving me alone at the table with my cold mug and the ringing in my ears. The next morning, I found her in the backyard. She was watering the garden, barefoot in the grass, sunlight catching in her hair. For a moment, I just watched, unnoticed. She looked different when she thought no one was around, less guarded, almost younger. I stepped outside, and she startled. "Didn't hear you," she said, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Sorry," I muttered. "Didn't mean to creep up." She smirked, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You have a habit of showing up where you're not expected." The words stung, but there was no malice in them. If anything, they felt like a defense. "I'll stop if you want me to," I said. She looked at me then, really looked. And for just a flicker of a second, it was like she didn't want me to stop at all. But she turned back to the flowers, crouching low. "I was married before," she said suddenly, without looking at me. The words tumbled out like she hadn't planned them. It didn't end well. I told myself I'd never make the same mistakes again. Her shoulders tightened as she spoke, and I caught the faint tremor in her hands as she adjusted the hose. "What kind of mistakes?" I asked softly. She laughed once, sharp and bitter. "Falling for someone who couldn't stay." Her voice cracked on the last word. She shut off the hose, standing quickly, brushing dirt from her palms like she wanted to bury the conversation. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't him, that I wouldn't leave, that I'd never been able to look at her the way my brother did, half distracted, half somewhere else. But those words stayed locked behind my teeth. Instead, I just stepped closer. Close enough that she stiffened but didn't move away. Her eyes flicked to mine, a warning and an invitation at once. Neither of us spoke. My hand brushed against hers as I reached to take the hose from her. It wasn't deliberate, not exactly, but I didn't pull away. And neither did she that night. I couldn't sit still. The memory of her hand brushing mine wouldn't leave me. I paced the living room, lights low, trying to read, trying to listen to music, but nothing settled. Every sound upstairs reminded me she was here. And then I heard footsteps on the stairs. She appeared in the doorway, hair loose, sweater draped around her like she'd pulled it on in a rush. "You're still up?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said, standing too quickly, like I'd been caught. "Couldn't sleep." A pause. She studied me, then stepped closer. "You look like you've got something on your mind." I almost laughed. If only she knew. But before I could answer, the front door opened. My brother's voice carried in, cheerful, careless. "Hey, anyone awake?" We froze. She moved first, brushing past me, her shoulder grazing mine, too deliberate to be an accident, too subtle to be noticed by anyone else. By the time he stepped into the room, she was already sitting on the couch, calm, collected, as though nothing had happened. I stayed standing, trying to steady my breathing. "You're up late," he said to me. "Big plans tomorrow?" I shook my head. "Just restless." He dropped his keys on the table, kissed her temple without really looking at her, then disappeared upstairs, already on his phone. The silence after he left was unbearable. She was still on the couch, staring at the floor. I sat down beside her before I could think better of it. "You almost said something earlier," I whispered. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "And I shouldn't have. Whatever this is, whatever you think this is, it can't happen." Her words cut, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. She wasn't steady. "Neither was I didn't imagine it," I said quietly. Her head snapped toward me, eyes blazing. For a moment, I thought she might deny it, might shut me out completely. But she didn't. She just looked at me, longer than she should have, longer than was safe. Then she stood abruptly. "I'm going to bed." I almost let her go. Almost. But as she turned, I caught her wrist without thinking. She froze. "Tell me I'm wrong," I said. My voice was low, desperate. "Tell me I imagined it." Her breath hitched. She looked down at where my hand held her, then up at me again. Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence between us stretched, fragile and dangerous. I thought she might stay. I thought she might lean in. My pulse hammered. And then, suddenly, footsteps creaked on the stairs. My brother's voice again, casual, half asleep. "Babe? You coming up?" She pulled her wrist free, almost stumbling back. "Yes," she called out, steady enough to fool him. But not me. Her eyes flicked to mine one last time, raw and unguarded, before she disappeared upstairs. I sat there in the dark, hands still burning from her skin, knowing the line between us had already been crossed. I avoided her for 2 days. Or maybe she avoided me. Either way, the house felt wrong. My brother was always gone, work dinners, late nights, phone calls that lasted until morning. I told myself that should make things easier. But it didn't. Because when we finally crossed paths again, all the silence between us snapped like a stretched wire. It happened in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, sleeves rolled back, hair tied tight like she wanted control over something, anything. I walked in for a glass of water, and she stiffened before I even spoke. "You've been quiet," I said. She didn't turn. "So have you." I leaned against the counter, watching the muscles in her shoulders tighten. "I thought maybe I scared you off." That made her pause. She set a plate in the rack a little too hard. "You didn't scare me." She trailed off, shook her head. "You make me forget myself." My chest tightened. "That's not a bad thing." Her eyes flicked to mine then, sharp, almost angry. "It is when I'm supposed to marry your brother." The words landed like a slap. I should have backed off. But something in me refused. "You don't look at him the way you look at me," I said. My voice was low, shaking. She froze, dish towel in hand. For a moment, neither of us breathed. Then she whispered, "You don't know what you're saying." But I did. I'd known it for weeks. Maybe months. "I see it," I pressed. "Every time he's here, you're somewhere else. And every time it's just us," I stepped closer. Too close. "You can't even hide it." Her lips parted, but no sound came. She gripped the counter like it was the only thing holding her steady. "You're too young," she said finally, a whisper meant for herself. "You don't understand what this would ruin." "Then tell me to stop." My voice cracked. "Tell me you don't feel it and I'll leave tonight. You'll never have to see me again." Her chest rose sharply. She turned, facing me fully now. The towel slipped from her hands. "Don't do this," she whispered. But her eyes, God, her eyes said everything she wouldn't. The air was suffocating, charged with every word left unsaid. My hand moved before I thought, brushing against hers on the counter. She didn't pull away. Not this time. And then, the sound of his laughter cut through from the hallway. My brother's voice, closer now, heading toward us. She jerked back like she'd been burned, pressing a hand over her mouth. Her whole body trembled. I stood there, pulse racing, watching the woman I shouldn't want, watching her look at me like she'd break if I touched her again. And just before the door swung open, she whispered so faint I almost didn't hear it, "If you don't stop, I won't either." The next evening, my brother announced it over dinner, like it was nothing. Like it didn't detonate the air between us. "I'm going out of town for a few days," he said, scrolling on his phone as he forked food into his mouth. "Conference in Denver. Should be back Monday." I froze with my glass halfway to my lips. Out of town. Days. Alone. My pulse kicked, and across the table, she nearly dropped her fork. "That soon?" she asked carefully. "Yeah." He barely looked at her. "Flight's tomorrow morning." "You'll manage, right?" Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded. "Of course." I didn't breathe until the subject changed. That night, I heard her pacing in her room. The creak of the floorboards, the soft thud of her steps back and forth. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every muscle tight. If he left, it wouldn't be safe anymore. Nothing would hold us back. By morning, he was gone. The house felt too big, too quiet. Every sound carried. Every glance lasted too long. We avoided each other at first, moving around like strangers in a borrowed space. But the silence was heavier than words. It broke in the kitchen. She was making coffee when she said, suddenly, "He's not who you think he is." I blinked. "What do you mean?" Her hand trembled slightly as she set the mug down. She didn't look at me when she said it. "He's been seeing someone else. 4 months." The words hit me harder than I expected. "You knew?" Her laugh was bitter, hollow. "Of course I knew. You don't miss something like that. The late nights, the excuses. The way he stopped trying to even pretend." I stared at her. For so long, I'd told myself this was wrong because she belonged to him. But if he had already betrayed her, if he'd never really been here, then what were we holding back for? "Why are you still with him?" I asked, voice rough. Her eyes lifted, sharp, almost angry. "Because I don't want to be the woman who ruins brothers. Because walking away would make me the villain, not him." I stepped closer, heart pounding. "You're not the villain." Her jaw tightened. "If anyone found out, who would they blame? Him? Or me? Or you?" Her voice cracked on the last word, and she pressed a hand to her forehead like she was unraveling. Without thinking, I reached for her wrist, pulling her hand down gently. "Then let them blame me," I said. Her eyes met mine, wide, vulnerable, terrified. She didn't pull away. The air between us felt like it was seconds from breaking, from snapping into something we couldn't take back. And then, her phone buzzed on the counter. Loud. Relentless. She glanced at the screen, face paling. Slowly, she turned it toward me. It was my brother's name. And beneath it, just 2 words, "I know." The phone kept buzzing, each vibration louder than the last. She finally silenced it, but her hand shook as she set it back on the counter. "He knows," she whispered. My throat tightened. "Maybe it's not about us." "Maybe," her laugh was brittle. "Don't. You saw it. He knows." I didn't answer. Because she was right. The timing, the tone, my brother wasn't guessing. He was certain. She sank into a chair, clutching her arms around herself. For the first time, she looked small. Fragile. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Not the wanting, not even the guilt, this. I sat across from her, leaning forward. "Then tell me. Do you regret it?" Her eyes flicked up, sharp, wet. "Regret what?" "Us. Whatever this is. Whatever it's becoming." Silence. She pressed her lips together, chest rising and falling too quickly. "I regret that it happened this way," she said finally, voice trembling. "But I don't regret you." The words hit like a strike to my chest. I reached for her hand without thinking, and this time she didn't pull away. Her fingers were cold, but they tightened around mine like she needed something to anchor her. "What do we do now?" I asked. My voice cracked on the last word. Her gaze dropped to the floor. "If we tell him, he'll never forgive us. If we lie, it'll eat us alive. Either way, someone gets destroyed." The clock ticked too loudly on the wall. I wanted to promise her something simple: run away, start over, leave it all behind. But the weight of it pressed down on both of us. Finally, she whispered, "Maybe love isn't about choosing the easy thing. Maybe it's about choosing the thing you can't walk away from." Her hand trembled in mine, but she didn't let go. I leaned closer, heart pounding. "You can't walk away from me," I said. Her eyes lifted, wet and searching. "And you can't walk away from me either." We sat there, inches apart, every line already crossed, every secret already spoken without words. The air was thick with it, fear, want, guilt, love, all tangled into something neither of us could untangle. I thought of my brother, of everything we were breaking. But when she leaned in the slightest bit, not a kiss, just a tilt, just a surrender, I knew the choice had already been made. The front door slammed. We both jerked back, her chair scraping against the tile. My brother's voice echoed through the hall, "I forgot my wallet." Panic shot through us. She pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes wide, as footsteps drew closer. I caught her gaze one last time, and in it was everything: fear, love, regret, defiance. Whatever happened next, whatever door opened, whatever words were said, we understood each other now. And there was no going back. The sound of his footsteps grew louder, each one a hammer against the silence. She stood frozen, back pressed against the counter, and I stood too quickly, nearly knocking over the chair. We didn't have time to move, didn't have time to erase what had just passed between us. He entered the kitchen, phone still in hand, brows furrowed as he rifled through the table for his wallet. "You two look like you've seen a ghost," he said casually. Neither of us spoke. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. His gaze flicked between us, and for a moment, I swore he knew. But then he found his wallet, shoved it into his pocket, and said, "Back Monday." Another kiss on her temple, barely a brush of lips, more of a gesture than anything real, and then he was gone again. The door closed. Silence fell. She sank into the chair, burying her face in her hands. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. I crouched down in front of her. "Then don't." "Not with him." Her hands dropped, revealing eyes red with unshed tears. "You don't understand. I built my whole life around holding things together. If I leave, if I choose you, I'll be the woman who ruined a family. If I stay, I'll never forgive myself." Her voice cracked on the last word. I reached for her hands, holding them firm, steadying them even as mine shook. "You won't ruin a family. He already did that the moment he stopped choosing you." Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue. She just stared at me, as though the weight of what I'd said was finally breaking through. "You're too young for this kind of mess," she whispered. "Then let me grow into it," I said, almost pleading. "With you." A long silence stretched between us. Outside, the street was quiet, the hum of a distant car the only sound. In that stillness, the choice hung heavy, unavoidable. Finally, she exhaled, slow and shaking. "I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I'm strong enough for what this will cost." I squeezed her hands tighter. "Then let's figure it out together. No pretending. No hiding. Just us." Her eyes closed for a moment, and when they opened again, they softened in a way I hadn't seen before, not guarded, not afraid, but open. Real. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against mine. No kiss, no grand gesture. Just the quiet surrender of two people who knew there was no turning back. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "So am I whispered. "But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." The room felt different after that. Lighter, even with all the weight still hanging over us. Because for the first time, we weren't avoiding it. We weren't pretending. We had chosen each other. And that's how it ended, not clean, not perfect, but real. Two people who shouldn't have fallen, standing together anyway. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?